way, as I perceive it, my best guess is how power worked its way into the human race and civilizations and nations and states and chieftains and whatever you want to call it. 9,000 years ago, everybody worked together. When people were hunter-gatherers 100,000 years ago, everybody was like a family. Everybody worked together. There wasn't really a leader except maybe the older man who had the more experience helping everybody to master their craft of hunting, gathering, whatever it took to survive. It wasn't till people started farming, which was 9,000 years ago, maybe 10,000 years ago at most. Everything changed for the human race, massively changed. Now, people weren't moving around. People were sedentary. They stayed in one place. They made houses. Before 10,000 years ago, people didn't have houses. They moved around. They were hunter-gatherers. They didn't stay in one place at all. For over 200,000 years, the human race did not have houses. They walked and they walked and they walked. They slept and then they walked. And that was their whole life for 200,000 years. The point of all this is, as people began to become sedentary, you see from the settlements of 9,000 years ago, the settlements showed that everybody was still equal. They didn't have a leader. Everybody still worked together like hunter-gatherers. Everybody supported each other. Everybody supported their religious, whatever you want to call it, they had back in the day. There was no writing, so we'll never know exactly how their religion worked back then. When it comes right down to it, that was the beginning of a big change in the human race, which was only 10,000 years ago. It's not that long ago in the scope of human existence. Then, as people became sedentary, then there started to be fiefdom, and all of a sudden now these sedentary people needed protection. And this is how I feel that so-called leaders came into existence. Now all of a sudden you need to put people together to protect your tribe, to protect your crops, to protect your hunting, to protect everything about your way of life. So they start putting that together. But then these people saw the power of that. The people that were really successful at protecting their group began to see the power. And when there was nothing to protect, when there was nobody attacking, they began to impose that power upon their own people. They would turn the violence and everything against their people. I think that's where everything changed, and that's when people began to feel the addiction of power, the addiction of wealth. And from that point on, mankind has never been the same. And it's been warfare after warfare after warfare because of this change in the human race. The way in which these people, when they turned this addiction of power onto their people who they were supposedly protecting, the way they did it is, I'm sure of this, this is another one of my ideas, that when it come time for protection, if you didn't do exactly what they told you to do, they would just not protect you. They'd leave you out on your own. So you didn't have a choice. And so you just had your power stolen from you by the people who were supposed to be protecting you. It's the same thing that the Congress and the presidency does now. They'll throw you in prison if you don't do exactly as you're told. I mean, kill you if you don't follow the rules, just like they killed JFK. You know, you have to follow the rules. So you are enslaved by the very people who are supposed to be protecting you. We, the people, have been 100% enslaved by the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, and the CIA. They are masters of the so-called free people. As society advanced, as it evolved, in 4000 BC, communities still didn't even have walled communities. There was no sign of warfare between different groups of people. By 31 BC, 5100 years ago, all of a sudden there was walled communities all around the place. So it was in between 4000 to 3100 BC is when warfare between communities began to spring up around Mesopotamia, around the Iraq-Iran area, which is, you're talking over 6,000 to 5,100 years ago. This is when the warfare between groups of people started. This is when the search, the desire for power began to infect the human race, where people began to try to steal power from others. But you gotta remember this. One thing you gotta remember. When people seek power, there's only one way to get it. One way, that's it. To take it away from somebody else. This is when the human race began to turn on itself. When other people started trying to demand servitude from their fellow man. Before 4000 BC, that didn't exist. Everybody were equal. Everybody shared. Everybody did their fair share of whatever was needed for the community to survive. Hunt, farm, cook, raise children, whatever. Everybody did their fair share. So this was the time when the human race made a massive change from everybody being equal to certain people having power, gaining power, and demanding power, and abusing others to gain more power and more riches.